when I saw this Fox News report from the Five reacting to some bombshell news about Biden's apparent decline, it really got me thinking: who was actually running the government and the administration by their if you go by their suggestions, Jill Biden seems to be the one who was the backbone and the driver, the one in the driving seat throughout the whole Biden presidency, and probably even leading up to him winning the White House. During his campaign, she probably played a key role. I mean, it starts to make sense now, thinking along these lines. One of the reasons the Democrats desperately wanted to gain another 4 years, even if it meant having Kamala Harris as the president or Joe Biden, either or, is the simple idea that if they lost and Trump and his team got into power, they'll have access to and the keys to all the cupboards, and they can see where all the skeletons are being kept. As in, they can get behind what was true, what wasn't true, and uncover some of the stories that have been described as conspiracy theories and complete falsehoods. Similar to the Twittergate, they can actually verify that some of what was being suggested turns out to be actual fact. And this kind of explains why there was so much at stake beyond just gaining another 4 years for the Democrats as the leaders and running the government and all the rest. There was a lot of disclosure, you could say, that they were fighting against having to come to the light. So the fact that now Trump and his team are going to be entering the White House and have the authorization to look in corners that they were previously prevented from seeing into, and they'll be able to question people, and people will be in more of a position to have to answer these questions honestly, because there's more at stake for individuals, anyone who was part of the whole process. I mean, to an extent, when you listen to this discussion they're having at the Five, it leads you to believe that not only Joe Biden, I mean, some of his staffers seem to be actually doing the jobs of the president and making decisions on his behalf and pretty much running the administration. Very, very, very strange scenario. Although on the right, there are a lot of people who were alluding to this and hinting at this and pointing in this direction. And, in most cases, it was just, batted to the side and called disinformation and put down to being fake news. Now, it seems what was previously described as fake news is now starting to look more and more like real, true news, accurate, correct news. So it's food for thought, it really is.
That's the question everyone is asking after a bombshell report from the Wall Street Journal blew the lid off Joe Biden's declining mental state and how the White House has been covering it up right from the very start. According to the Journal, signs that the commander-in-chief was diminished stretched all the way back to, quote, the first few months of his presidency. Aides adjusting his schedule, noticing Joe becoming tired if they went long, and he started making mistakes. So they kept meetings short and started controlling who he spoke with. And like a good little lapdog, the media aided and abetted the cover-up. Remember this lunacy?
F you if you can't handle the truth. This version of Biden, intellectually, analytically, is the best Biden ever. Not a close second.
I'm not even going to ask a question on that. It's so absurd. Jesse, they say that the 50 sources say they noticed in the first few months that he couldn't handle things. But do you remember they're using COVID as an excuse for him not to campaign, not to get out there and to have the basement campaign where, remember, cars, they would beep if they supported Joe Biden? There were 8 of them.
Yeah, so they kept the COVID structure throughout the rest of the presidency. And he was treated like an aging dictator, an aging king. You know, the same things they said about Trump were true of him. He was isolated. He was out of touch. He was mentally unfit. People were keeping things from him. Mm-hmm. They wouldn't give him bad polling. They wouldn't give him bad headlines. He was AWOL during the lead up to Afghanistan. People were trying to get him on the phone at key moments. Yeah. There's no way to get a hold of the guy. And he delegated his presidential powers to his staff, Judge. So when people ask, well, who's really the president? It was his staff. His staff were executing the duties of the president. And I think it was April 2021, right out of the gate, they were canceling meetings because he was having a bad day. So all this conspiracy theory about, Joe Biden shot, he's a puppet, it was true. I mean, at this point, we're going to find out he stole the election from Trump. At this point, the way things are going.
Jesse?
I'm just saying the way things are going, I wouldn't be surprised if we found that.
You know, the amazing part of it, Charlie, is that Jill Biden was in charge of the one cabinet meeting they had in 11 months. Jill Biden was the one who campaigned in 2020. She out-campaigned her husband, Joe. Jill Biden is the one that people had to go through to get to. Jill was one who they had to go through to get to Joe. Well, why was she so desperate for this?
I guess, we don't know, but I guess it was because she was desperate to cling to the White House and to remain relevant and remain in the White House, because we don't have any other better answer than that. Obviously, this is all Joe Biden's responsibility. He's the one that allowed this to happen, but she bears a lot of responsibility for allowing it to happen to her husband. It's embarrassing. It wrecks whatever legacy he might have had. He leaves office the most unpopular president in the history of polling. And I also think that, and I hope that the people that are around him that lied to him, lied to us, lied to everybody, and kept this Weekend at Bernie's charade going all this time, don't escape scrutiny, and people don't forget that what they did to us. They talk about destroying democracy and taking democracy away. Yeah. There's no greater example of destroying democracy and taking it away than actually having the person that got elected they lied to him about, they shielded him from outsiders. They lied to him even as late as the campaign. They were lying to him about his pollsters, about his polling. They wouldn't let him talk to his pollsters. So even he didn't have any idea how bad things were going into the summer. There's a lot of blame to go around for everybody. Joe Biden is most responsible, but I hope that nobody forgets that what these staffers did to undermine democracy.
When the Robert Hur report came out, do you remember there was a fury from the White House that Merrick Garland let it go out? And I have to wonder if Merrick Garland made sure it went out so that he at least would have been like, yeah, we're trying to tell people like this was what was happening. Mm-hmm. One of the things in the article is that they scripted his interactions with his defense secretary, Lloyd Austin. No wonder Biden had no idea Lloyd Austin was missing in action for 3 weeks. They never spoke anyway. And if they did, there was a script. It's not a call center. He didn't have a way to communicate directly with his Treasury Secretary. No wonder they never talked about inflation as a problem for Americans. You had the chief of staff saying it was a high-class problem. Then you think of those historians who would visit the White House including writing speeches for Joe Biden and telling him, you could be bigger than FDR. They weren't trying to have historical analysis. They were trying to make history with somebody who couldn't make his own decisions. Think of these people also. Annie Linsky of the Wall Street Journal wrote a piece 2 weeks before the debate between Biden and Trump, where the charade is exposed. And the White House came down on her like a ton of bricks. And she had said, like, I wrote this not because I wanted to hurt Joe Biden. It was like more in sadness than in anything. I'm having to write this. I have 40 sources, and I'll never forget that. The spokespeople from the White House just trying to destroy her reputation and her life. What sweet justice for Annie Linsky and her co-writers there.
To Jessica, what happened in this White House was something that I don't think America has seen ever. We all knew what was going on. We sat at this table and actually thought about what was clearly the cognitive decline of a bobbling, dithering man. And then we were like, and Kamala's great and he's really great. I mean, is there anything about that you think, you would change in terms of the Democrat Party? Should they have done something? Should they do something now?
Well, I don't think there's anything to do right this second. I think strategy will obviously be different going into future elections. I think people are going to be much more skeptical of what they're being told by people that are close to candidates. I mean, this is someone who throughout his career has had a very tight inner circle, but the extremeness of that seems unprecedented from looking at this. And this article is going to be tough for people to ignore because it's so well sourced and reported. It's not someone saying like, oh, I saw Joe Biden walked in the wrong direction or something, right? Like this is a lot of people, and they have a lot of people on the record, going both directions of it. And Democrats saying things like, I think it was Senator Heinrich, that he spent more time with President Obama than he did with President Biden. And he was much less senior then, right? He just came in and Obama was giving him much more time. So there was obviously more of an openness to folks. But this is consistent with what I think a lot of people feel in the level of betrayal that Democrats, and myself included, underestimated that average voters feel about it.
Something else that comes to mind that's closely related to this perspective is is Elon Musk when he took over Twitter, and how towards the closing stages of him concluding that deal, there was a lot of pushback and resistance almost to him taking over the company. And then he got the keys to the algorithm and everything else. He got to see really what was going on with the staffing situation, and supposedly laid off 75 members of staff, and the business was said to, okay, it's gonna totally collapse. And to this day, it continues on. So, you have to question, were all of those staff needed, and what were they actually doing if it didn't make that much difference when they were let go? And then to top it all, the Twittergate reports, all that information that came to the surface of how closely Twitter and the Twitter staff worked with the government and the FBI and social media platforms to censor, cancel, and control what people actually got to see and hear on the platform. All of that wouldn't have come out if he didn't take over the company. So it kind of there was a comparison here with what's going on with the Biden administration and these previous elections. You could see it wasn't just about not letting Trump get in, all the talk about him being Hitler, threat to democracy and all the rest. You see, there was actually more than that going on. I think the biggest fear was disclosure, the information and truths that were going to surface when the administration hands over. And before this has even taken place, stuff starting to come to the surface. And you can see with Biden's, pardon, the stories about preemptive pardons and things like that. You can see some people are starting to get hot under the collar, and you could see why, for good reason. You just can't imagine what's going to be coming to the surface in the coming days, weeks, and months as the transition takes place. and doors and cupboards, drawers and lockers and files are opened and information is revealed. It's going to be very, very, very dramatic, I do believe. There's going to be a lot of activity in the media, in the coming weeks and months. And I do believe there'll be global repercussions, tsunami-sized effects of huge proportions. So keep watching the space. We haven't seen nothing yet. You've been here with myself, Owen Uadi, here at Corner Speak. Be good, be safe, be creative. We out.